Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay, so hello and welcome back. So we'll continue our discussion that we were having on plastic ban, and if you remember, we talked about plastic ban in India and some other countries so far. Now, for the remaining part of this particular week, we will be focusing most on China's policy, which has an implication throughout the world, including India. So, this China short policy, we will talk about that in little bit in detail and how this is impacting our plastic waste management, and not only plastic waste, other waste management issues as well. But for this course, since we are focusing on plastic, we will talk more about that. We may touch upon some other waste stream too. So, let us get started. So, in terms of this China short policy, China has put a National Short 2017, which is the crackdown on waste import. Now, what does that mean is, as you know, that major manufacturing these days happens in developing countries, emerging economies, and China being one of the most important of those emerging economies. There is lots and lots of manufacture happens in China. If you compare China and India, Chinese are much ahead in terms of manufacturing. We do a lot of service industry, that like softwares and those kind of industry more in India, but in China it's more of factories. Manufacturing happens more over there. So lots of factories. The factory requires raw material, and when you require raw material, you need raw material from different sources, and one of the source is coming from waste material. So this waste material from developed countries like US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, European Union, once they have collected the recyclables, those recyclables, most like a good portion of those recyclables used to end up in China for processing and resource recovery, and that resource used to go in Chinese manufacturing plants, because that's where the demand are in terms of manufacturing. But as China itself started focusing on recycling within its own country, and with a huge population, 1.3 billion people, they started having their own recyclables up to a good quantity. So that the reliance or the dependence on the recyclables from the foreign countries, from the developed countries, are gradually going down. So now China wants to take your recyclables only if it's clean. So they want that it has to be clean, not the dirty recyclables. So if you don't do the recycling, sorting and all that, source separation is not proper, and there is a contamination in the recyclables, they will not take it. So that's what the whole concept behind this China short policy, and we'll discuss this in more detail. So that's it's kind of, they also call it second green fence. So it's a second green fence, as some people call it as a second green fence. So what is that national short policy? What are the different stuff is in there? So there are 24 items of waste banned by China, that they will not take it into their country. 8 categories of plastic waste, covering LDPE, HDPE, PET, PVC, PS from living sources like post-consumer. So post-consumer plastic waste, which has a chances of more contamination, China said that we are not going to take it. So these are the waste banned. One type of paper waste, which is the unsorted mixed paper. Unsorted mixed paper, because see, if you do a lot of sorting, that requires a lot of energy, that requires a lot of manpower, that requires a lot of money. So it gets costly to make the waste sorted into different categories, and that makes the waste a good value. That's the recovered material has a good value, is of good quality, and of course you have to invest money to do that. So there has been a practice of, rather than investing money say in Australia or in US or in Canada, many of these municipalities, since they could send those waste to China earlier, they were not, and to do those due diligence, I may call it, within their own jurisdiction was turning out to be costlier than sending it off to China. So that's what they were sending this mixed paper. And we get those unsorted mixed paper even in India. Like I have seen that in there is one Krishna Tissues plant nearby near Kolkata area, where I saw some of this waste papers, mixed waste paper coming from UK, coming from Australia, and they recycle those, and they produce paper tissues and a lot of other products out of that, even packaging paper and all those things. So, but they don't want mixed paper. 11 types of textile waste. So, they do not want textile waste, 11 types, not clothing, and 4 types of metal slag containing vanadium. So, those were banned. So these were totally banned, they do not want those. And they also put a new standard limiting all imported recycled material to a maximum contamination level of 0.5%, which is pretty strict regulation. Earlier it was their goal was to have 0.3%, but then they settled for 0.5%. So, what does that mean? Say if you have 100 kg of recyclable plastic or recyclable paper coming into China, which is being sent to China for recycling and resource recovery, out of the 100 kg, 0.5 kg, 0.5%. So, it cannot be more than 0.5 kg of contamination. So, 99.5 kg has to be the clean paper. So, that is a good, like a very tough demand to meet by many of the, unless these recycling companies in developing countries, all those countries which used to send those plastics or papers and other recyclables to China, is start putting a lot of efforts on there. So, there is a lot of debate, a lot of term is going on in the world in terms of this China ban or China's condition that you need to have maximum you can have is 0.5%. You cannot have more than that, otherwise your load will be rejected, it will be sent back. So, that is creating a lot of investment need is happening or going to happen in recycling business in these countries like US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and European Union and other places. So, that is whichever used to, so the countries which used to send their recyclables to China but in interim, while they do all these things in their own country, they are also looking for alternative markets, which you talk about, because of the aftermath of China ban is actually problematic for a country like India, because we will start getting a lot of these contaminated recyclables coming to our country, which will be of which will have a bigger environmental footprint. So, just look at the timeline, what the date. So, they started, they don't see these things doesn't happen overnight, it takes time. So, it started in 2013. So, China implements the Operation Green Fence policy. They enforced existing laws via customs inspection, 0.3% contaminated threshold, but 5% in practice. So, they were saying that 0.3% will go there, but up to 5% they were okay, they were taking it. July 2017, China files notification to World Trade Organization WTO to ban 24 categories that we just looked in a previous slide by September 2017. November, China notifies WTO of a revision of initial filing, adopting 0.5% to 1% contamination as the acceptance threshold for the 24 categories, those which were banned. March 2018, entry into the force of 0.5% or to 1% contaminated threshold to be strictly enforced. So, this whole thing together is called National Short Policy, that is what it's known as. So, around 0.5% is what they are trying to enforce. So, 2013, as we said, there was focus on quality, they were more on trying to get better plastic. 2017 National Short is effort to eliminate illegal waste smuggling. There was bans on 24 material, including mixed paper and mixed plastics, which we saw that. There is a contamination limit, announced that 0.5% contamination limit. They were also suspended license. So, Chinese government began limiting license to closed down mills in China, which were not following these rules. So, in 2018, which was this past year, in January 2018 bans came in effect, March 0.5% contamination limit came in effect. Then there was Operation Blue Sky, Chinese customs to inspect all loads at point of entry into China, in effect through 2018. May 2018 suspended all inspection of US imports, since the inspections are required. All exports to China stopped regardless of quality, stressing markets across the globe. So, you cannot send this contaminated stuff to China anymore. June 2018, China allowed its shipment with inspection, and some ships were on the water for non-banned material. So, if you look at some of the other like actions, so it started if you initially from 2014, if you look at the timeline 2014 to 2016, then 2017 there was and then 2018 plus. So, 14 to 16 there was China's customs department were trying to strengthen the supervision of solid waste imports and crack down on smuggling waste, which they used to get a lot of them. There was impact on polyethylene and polypropylene, where average demand, there was a growth in average demand, average volume also grew, and there was around 6.5, 6.6% growth, and you see more volume of those material. Then in 2017, the SOD action, the goal was to prohibit the smuggling of foreign garbage into China, including waste plastic, which we just talked about, that they informed WTO that all imports to solid waste containing environmental hazards are going to be prohibited. And then there was a demand, average demand growth in terms of polyethylene and polypropylene. As you can see, there was a growth in volume. Then post SOD action, with a complete ban on the import of plastic waste, we expect an uplift in the consumption of virgin reagents material and more investment in recycling facilities. So, that's there was a growth of around 10%, volume growth is 2.7 per metric ton, polypropylene demand growth was 7.7%, and the volume growth was 2 million tons. So, with the ban on plastics recyclable, so we got a lot of virgin materials coming into the market. So, more stuff getting into the market. Of course, somebody has to look at in terms of what is the real, when we talk about this China short ban, what is the real environmental footprint of this whole activity, because it is not just what is not coming into China, what is happening with those material now. Some places I have read newspapers reports or some technical articles report which suggest that many of these are not going to the waste to energy plants. So, it is not getting recycled, it is going to the waste to energy plant. So, is it really is it a good thing to do, or should we had it been recycled, that would have been better. So, we have to come, some of this would be a very beautiful kind of a life cycle analysis kind of exercise, where we can see what is the impact of China short ban on global recyclable industry, and based on the actions that the global recycling industries are taking, what is the real environmental benefit? Are we really getting environmental benefit, or of course, China locally is may be benefiting from it, but is it really helping the global environmental cause, or is it a positive development, or is it a negative development? And so, that those things would be interesting to look at. So, if you look at the global economy and in terms of mainland China's share of global imports, so in terms of the import, 3% like iron and steel, since China makes a lot of iron and steel by itself. So, over the past 20 years, China has become the primary market for recyclables from across the globe. By 2017, 30% of recyclables from the US were exported to China. As their economy grew, they shipped finished goods and products, and we filled the containers with recycled material to ship back to China. So, that goods will go to US and other big countries. Those containers, those shipping containers will fill in the recyclable waste, and then bring it back to China for processing and reuse. So, as you can see, iron and steel import was 3%, and rest of the world is 97%. Then if you look at copper, China was importing 55%, well, rest of the world 45%. Then aluminum 24%, like more than 1/4 of the world, nearly 1/4. Fibers more than 50%. Plastic more than 50%. So, as you can see, in terms of the recyclables, iron and steel, copper, aluminum, fiber and plastic, fibers and copper more and more was getting into China. Now, once with these rules come into effect, we see that there was a kind of a declining trend in terms of scrap exports to China in 2017, 2018. These values are in metric tons, and you don't have to worry too much about the values. What we are looking at is just the trend. So, if you look at from in this particular graph, if we start from January 17 to March 2018, which is a period of around 13-14 months, as you can see, and this orange one is the mixed paper, the blue is the scrap plastic. So, let us look at the blue first, and as you can so blue has a tendency of kind of going down, especially after we have the China ban is effective, we see kind of a drastic drop, and so that's the values going down, and these values are in metric ton, as I said earlier. And similarly, if you look at the mixed paper, they also have a tendency to have kind of there was a sharp decline of mixed paper. So, thing is that why there is a decline, this plastic and those recyclables, material recycling facilities in US is not able to keep it clean to the standard that China wants it. So, since they cannot keep it clean, China will not take it. So, only the material which were clean were allowed, the material which were not clean was not sent. So, that's export of recyclable has gone down. Now, the question is what will happen to those recyclables in US, because US for the last 2 decades or 2.5 decades is I'm just using US as an example, US, Canada, European Union, Australia, New Zealand, all those countries for last 2 to 3 decades, they have relied on China in terms of managing their waste, in managing their recyclables. Now, all of a sudden if it stops and there is no capacity to handle these kind of waste anymore left in US industry, what will happen to those recyclables? In the interim, they will probably like to go for some other markets like India, Indonesia, Malaysia, which will looked at, but at the same time it will force the local industry to grow in this particular area, because that's where they have to start managing their waste within their own boundaries rather than sending it off. So, top 5 importers to China in 2016, you have Hong Kong 43%. Now, this Hong Kong business is most of it is actually coming from other developing countries through Hong Kong. So, because there are certain loopholes, all the rules and regulation, that is why it kind of makes a huge chunk of it goes through the Hong Kong, but nearly 43%. So, that these 43% probably coming mostly from US, Canada or European Union and other places. So, Japan 20%, US 17%, Thailand 11%. And Germany is 9%. So, that is the importer of waste coming into China. So, to the top 5 export destination for top 5 historical exporters. So, if you look at the historical exporters from Germany, most of it goes to China, part of it just goes managed in other European countries as well, and India 6%, the orange the yellowish orange pie is the Indian pie. So, you can see that it is around 6% for the German export, German waste export, USA 5% for India, China is 56%. So, that is a lot of 56% of the recyclables are going to China. Canada little bit 3%, Hong Kong is around 32%, most of it will again end up to China. So, this as you can this number is again most of it will end up showing up in China as well. So, as you can see, China is kind of dominating 56% for 69%, 56%, and Japan again 17%, and then they also have 8% here, which part of it may end up over there as well. then Vietnam 26%, Taiwan, South Korea. So now with China gone of this pie of most of for most part, or the value is going very low. For the other destinations, obvious destinations that you see is Taiwan, Vietnam, India, Mexico. Those are the countries where you start seeing many of these recyclables being ending up. So that's what's kind of a little bit of concern, as because in India we don't have the infrastructure to deal with these recyclables. If we get right now a lot of these recyclables coming in to handle and process, so we'll have a lot of environmental issues associated with that as well. So Mexico, in terms of what they send, top 5 export destination for the top 5 historical exporter. Mexico, they're sending around 38% to China, 55% to US, because that's in the border area. Probably they are managing it in the United States, Canada, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, because the US has the capacity to manage that. So that's probably why it is ending up over there. If you look at the UK, Germany 53%, China 3%, Netherlands 7%, Hong Kong 12%, and France is 15%, 25%. So Hong Kong is again kind of partly going through the China as well. Germany, because they are using, they have a lot of recycling facilities and all that. UK struggles with waste management a little bit as compared to the other European countries. So they do send a lot of stuff to other European countries to manage. So if you look at the ranking of the World Bank regional groups based on the cumulative exports and imports of plastic waste from 1988 to 2016. So kind of from the very beginning to the very recent data. So there are different regions have been identified. EAP is our East Asia and Pacific. ECA is Eastern and Central Asia. NA is North America. LSE is Latin America and the Caribbeans. Then there are some unspecified. MENA is Middle East and North Africa. SAR is South Asia, and AFR is Africa. So that's what you have the list on the table on the left. As you can see, these are the different regions that is being identified over there. So and then for each of those there is a trade value, there is the mass, and then the percent total. And so this is on export. Then there is also one on imports, where the same regions have been given, mass and percent of total. So if you just look at quickly on this particular table, so for if you go by exports first, so in exports, as you can see, our East Asia and Pacific kind of leads it. So the ranking is also there on the leftmost on both the table. That's the ranking. So 44%, 44% is the export from East Asia and Pacific. And compared to, if you look at the import, East Asia and Pacific also imports 75%. So although it exports 44%, but it imports 75%. So net actually becomes more of an import rather than an export. So that's where we have a kind of a gap, almost 31% gap between imports and exports. So which is which not very healthy, because that's what leads to a lot of problem in terms of foreign currency reserves and all that. So next that ECA, which is the Eastern and Central Asia, which kind of is in the middle on both the table, in the second position on both the table. And so export is 32% and the import is 16%. So that's actually better. Then North Africa 14% is the export, then 5.2% is the import. Then LSE, which is Latin America and Caribbean, and unspecified MENA. So for each of those reasons, you can see there is, and this is for export and import of plastic waste. So it depends on your usage in this area for plastic as well. So for both the examples, we see that there is a substantial amount of plastic waste which is coming from East Asia and Pacific being exported as well as imported, and there are other countries out there as well. So being said that, if you look at also the ranking of World Bank economic groups based on the cumulative exports and imports of plastic waste, so here high income group, upper middle group, lower middle group, and low income group based on 2015 GDP or GNI, which is the gross national income. So, if you can divide that, what we see is this high income group has nearly 87% values in terms of exports that is happening. So, high income group is able to spend more time in terms of separation of the garbage and all that, and making it convenient for to be recycled. Then upper income is around 10%, 9.2%, lower income is 2.8%. Then we have low income based group, that is it's around 0.1%. So, similarly, if you look at the import part, we have again HIC, which is the high income group, 49%, and that low income group is close to 0% or 1%. So, what does it mean is it essentially is trying to tell us that if you look at financially, the countries which are a bit financially well off, they have more money to spend. So, and then those countries you see more progress. Those who are still struggling with poverty and all those kind of stuff, they struggle in terms of delivering this waste management facilities. So, that is where we do not get the numbers. So, the numbers are pretty low, or numbers are in the informal sector. We do not have those numbers in a government database or any report which we can use. Now, if you look at ranking of countries based on cumulative export for each plastic waste polymer classification, again from 1988 to 2016. So, here if you look at PE, PS, PVA, PVC and other plastics. So, you have Hong Kong and Hong Kong which is gets a lot of business along that line. So, we have cumulative net weight for other plastics in Hong Kong is 34.4 million metric tons. So, and then PE is around 13.6, Hong Kong SAR is 3.78, and then Hong Kong SAR another one is 4.35 for PS and PVC. So, PE 13.6, polystyrene 3.78, PVC is 4.35, and these are all million metric tons. So, that is in terms of the different ones. Then you have the US, Japan, Mexico, Netherlands, Germany, France, Canada, Thailand and Belgium. So, as you can see, in terms of the top 10 exporters, they do add up to around 91.2 million metric tons for other plastic, 56.4 million metric tons for polystyrene, for polyethylene, then we have polystyrene, and then we have the PVC. So, it is in terms of the polymer classification, criteria for polymer classification criteria from 1988 to 2016, we see that there are different countries which are exporting of the garbage as well as the importing the garbage plastic waste from different sources. Now, if you look at the same similar examples based on like for the European Union itself, like Belgium, Netherlands, and then some other countries like US, Australia, Germany, UK, Hong Kong and Thailand. So, as you can see over here from 2010 to 2017, we see that the biggest chunk actually coming from the gray, which is the Germany, then the yellow, which is Thailand, and as well as the Hong Kong. So, and of course, Belgium, United States, they are kind of pretty at the bottom over there. So, what does this mean is if you look at for each plastic type, there are different countries which are using at different levels, and then they kind of gets exported, imported from one country to the another. Now, ranking of countries based on cumulative import of each plastic waste. So, if you look at the earlier one was on export. Now, if you look at the import, China leads the pack most part, then we have Hong Kong, then US also imports certain types of plastic, and we have India there, we have Italy, we have Canada, Sweden, Belgium. So, for other plastics, then polyethylene, PE, again you have those similar names, Hong Kong, Netherlands, Belgium, Canada, Malaysia. Similar polystyrene, similar names are there, PVC also similar names are there. So, it basically is trying to tell you that although there are plastic waste people are worried about the exporting of it, but there are many countries which are import these plastic waste fiber as well for usage in different industry. So, let us look at this last slide and then we will stop. So, if you look at have to make an estimate of percentage of imported plastic to be managed in China from say 2010 to 2016, you look at your waste population, waste generation rate, percentage of plastic in waste stream, and based on that we can plastic waste generated is this much, and then based on how much plastic is getting into China. So, that is the imported recycled waste. So, we get a total recycled waste, and out of that percentage of plastic waste that is imported is around 12%. So, that is we are getting a lot of plastic waste not from within the country, but from also outside the country. So, and then with this China ban, these things have got a little bit of disturbed. So, there will be a lot of realignment going to happen. It's already happening in terms of getting these back on track. So, with that, let's stop in this particular video. So, we'll continue this discussion in the next video. So, hope you are enjoying the course so far, and any question, put it on the discussion forum, and thank you, and I will see you again in the next video.